So, you finally got a shiny new Apple Silicon Mac this holiday season and you're loving it. But wait a minute, what about all those retro DOS games that you like to play? Apple Silicon is ARM, not Intel. VMware or Oracle Box won't work anymore, so whatever are you going to do? Well, fear not, my techno friend, there is a solution, and that solution is emulation. Now, I'm no stranger to emulation. In fact, the first time I ever encountered an emulation application was back in 1999 when I worked for a construction company. Unfortunately, our VPN was Windows only, and if I wanted to be able to download my emails from the comfort of my own home, I'd need a PC, or so I thought. Enter a shiny copy of Virtual PC. This allowed me to run a full copy of Windows 98 on my Mac. The main issue with emulation is performance, and it takes a hefty hit on the host system, but this is where Apple Silicon shines, as the M-series processors are seriously beefy. In a minute, I'm going to install 86box on my M1 MacBook Air, and I'm going to give you some hints and tips that I've learned, so you can be playing those vintage games to your heart's content. Right after this message from PCBWay. Our good friends over at PCBWay have kindly sponsored this video. PCBWay offers a variety of services from PCB production and assembly to 3D printing in various materials, injection moulded plastics and even sheet metal fabrication. They offer a very professional and high quality service for extremely reasonable prices. Check out a link to their website in the description below. The first thing is x86box itself, which can be found on GitHub after a quick Google or in the down below bits. After you scroll to the bottom of the page, you'll need to find the download for the appropriate operating system and platform. It's nice to see ARM32 as well as ARM64 alongside x86 and x64, as previously finding ARM anything was difficult. I'm glad that's not the case today. And if you're feeling adventurous, the source code can be downloaded from here as well, but that's a bit above my pay grade. The next thing is MS-DOS itself, which we can download from one of our favourite websites, WinWorld-PC. A mouse driver is optional but super handy to have. This can be downloaded from archive.org, which is a site I use increasingly frequently lately. And if you can afford to make a donation, I know it's going to a good cause. And a CD-ROM driver is essential. Previously, getting CD-ROMs working in DOS was more like voodoo or magic, but this installer fixes all of that. And finally, the Sound Blaster driver from the amazing Phil's Computer Lab website. If you haven't checked that out before, I'd highly recommend you do so. It's a fantastic resource. So let's get configuring. 86box can run from your downloads folder, but I like to create a new folder in my home folder to keep things all tidy, and then I decompress the application and move it into there. You can of course create a folder in your main applications folder, and this way anyone who uses your machine will have access to it. I'm going to decompress the MS-DOS installer disks and get rid of some of the junk that comes with them. I find doing this helps keep things tidy and you don't end up with files cluttering up your system. Apple's Gatekeeper pops up here to prevent us from opening 86box, so we'll need to tell the machine it's fine and we know what we're doing, right? Opening settings and then scrolling down to privacy and then scrolling all the way down, we should see an Open Anyway button. Authenticate and macOS should be happy for us to continue. I guess we should all be thankful for such protections, even if they do cause annoyance on occasion. This next error message is normal. Basically, 86box needs a bunch of ROM files, and these are the various machines' BIOSes which are not included with the application, but can be downloaded separately. The download isn't huge and shouldn't take too long. Decompress this file into a folder called ROMs and move it to where the 86box application lives. If everything's okay, 86box should finally open, and that's where the fun begins. We can now configure it just as we want to. To do this, we need to click the Tools menu and click on Settings. Now this bit may seem a bit daunting as there are so many options, but on the first page we're simply going to select the CPU type and the amount of memory. Clicking on Display allows us to choose our graphics adapter. I like S3 cards as my original deck had one and Virtual PC emulates one too. It's a bit old, but I'm going to settle on the S3 Verge Diamond Stealth 3D 2000. On Inputs, we'll need to select the type of mouse. I'd recommend here PS2. When it comes to sound, I'm not an audiophile, and as long as the machine does more than beep through a PC speaker, then I'm not too bothered on what to choose. Here I'm going to use an ISA Sound Blaster 16 card, as I found it has a good level of compatibility with DOS games. We won't need networking at this point, so we'll skip over the networking tab and move on to ports. And this bit is entirely optional, but we'll disable Serial 1, Serial 2 and Parallel 1. Moving over to the storage controller, we'll choose internal controller for both the hard disk and floppy disk controllers. And we'll need to create a hard disk image which will be used to store our operating system files and games on. This is just like any other file on your hard drive and doesn't require you to repartition your drive. We'll store it in the same location as 86box is running, and we'll change the type of drive from dynamic size to raw image, as we'll be able to double click on this in macOS and it'll mount it. Call it whatever you'd like and click on the save button. Next we need to define how large the image will be. We don't need a very large drive, so 2GB here will do. And then leave all the other options as default and click OK. It may take a second or two to create the image file, but this is normal. Click on the floppy and CD-ROM tab and then change the type of floppy disk the machine will have. Choose 1.44MB. If you want a second drive, you can do this for the second one too, but I'm going to choose none here. Click on the first CD-ROM and change the bus to a TAPI. The speed can be left alone. We won't be specifying any other removable devices or peripherals at this point, so we'll just click on OK to save the machine's configuration. What 86box will do at this point is reboot the machine and start it up with your new custom config. When the machine powers on, we need to go into the BIOS and change the boot order. Click into the virtual machine and press the delete key, and if you're using an Apple laptop, then you might have to press the FN and backspace key. Using the arrow keys, highlight BIOS features setup and press enter. From there, press the down arrow until you get to boot sequence. Press FN and up or down arrow until you get to A, C. Press escape, and then using the arrow keys, go over to save and exit, and you'll be asked if you want to save the changes, press the Y key. This will always make the VM want to boot from a floppy disk, and you won't get stuck in a boot loop when installing DOS later. Talking of installing DOS, we'll need to tell the VM to boot from the first DOS installer disk. To do this, we need to click through the media menu and choose floppy, existing image, and then browse to where you saved the MS-DOS installer disks from and choose the first one out of the 4. Now I'm not going to walk you through the DOS install, as you've probably done the odd one or two yourself in the past. If you haven't, follow the instructions on screen and this will walk you through the process. The installer will take a little while, even on a modern machine, as this is because 86box is actually emulating the CPU speed we chose earlier. During the install, you'll be asked a couple of times to change the floppy disk, and to do this you simply click the media menu, floppy, existing image, and then select the next disk in the pack. You're not just limited to DOS though, you can even install Windows or an obscure operating system such as Apple's Intel version of Rhapsody. Trying to get this up and running in the past has been quite a challenge in applications such as VMware, as you have to do some scary terminal stuff to move the mouse and network card drivers over. It's doable, but not terribly user friendly. With 86box, however, you can create a custom VM that works with Rhapsody out of the box. No fiddling required, and it's nice to have higher colour depths and working audio too. BOS, which I've mentioned numerous times before, has a very limited hardware compatibility matrix. But you need not worry, and you can create a VM with just the right hardware for that. 86box is truly the Swiss Army knife of emulators. It's like a time machine for vintage computer enthusiasts. This open source emulator meticulously recreates the hardware of classic PCs from the 80s and 90s, letting you experience the charm of retro computing without needing a room full of clunky old machines. There are other applications such as UTM, which is the first one I heard about before moving over to Apple Silicon. It's built on QEMU, but it isn't quite as performant as x86box. It's also much more difficult to configure. However, pre-configured virtual machines are available for download on their website, allowing you to get up and running within minutes. Okay, so DOS is now installed. We need to eject the last floppy image and set about a couple of other nice to have things. One is a CD-ROM driver, and that's because we can attach either an ISO image of the game or software, or, uniquely to 86box, a folder which gets presented as an optical drive. This is great getting files into 86box such as drivers for audio and the mouse, and we'll use that shortly. Attach the CD-ROM installer floppy to the machine, open up the A drive and run the installer. You don't need to make any changes and just let the installer do its thing. We'll eject the floppy disk and restart. This time when DOS boots you should see the CD-ROM driver load. Now instead of mounting an image in the CD-ROM, we'll choose a folder, and we'll choose our downloads folder, as this is where the sound and mouse driver are located that we downloaded earlier. I like to copy these over to a new folder on the VM C drive, as they decompress into the same folder and it can get a bit messy. Mouse.com is optional, but allows you to use your mouse in applications such as Edit. The installer has a README which will tell you what you need to do, but basically you need to move the mouse.com file into your C-DOS folder and then add a line to your autoexec.bat pointing to the mouse.com file. We won't reboot just yet, and we'll go ahead and decompress the sound card files. We'll let it do its thing, including making changes to the system files required, and then we'll do a reboot. Now when the machine reboots, we'll have a working CD-ROM, sound and mouse. So let's talk about games. Which game do you think I should try first? Well, it's a hard one because there's so many out there, but I think we should answer the age-old question, will it Doom? Some nice chappy has uploaded Doom to archive.org, so we'll download it, but it's in zip format and it doesn't come with its own decompressor, so we'll need to download something like pkunzip, also from archive.org, and copy these over to the VM using the CD-ROM folder trick we used earlier. Now each time you add files to the folder you've selected, you'll need to eject the CD-ROM from the menu and choose it again. This tells 86box to refresh the contents, otherwise you'll be stuck seeing the old files over and over again. Once these files have been copied over to the VM, we'll run pkunzip to decompress Doom, and as there's some directories we'll need to use the -D switch. It shouldn't take long, and once done we'll need to run the setup so Doom knows about our sound card, which we'll use for both sound effects and MIDI music. Now I'm an idiot at this point because I forgot to record the audio whilst doing my screen capture, so you'll just have to play the Doom music in your head. Frame rate is excellent and is buttery smooth, and the sound works, you'll just have to take my word for it. I don't know if Doom has its own mouse driver and what we did earlier was a waste of time, but using the mouse allows you to strafe your Doom guy as well as using the keys on the keyboard to move him backwards and forwards, open doors and shoot, all the usual stuff. So that's it, you now have a working system that you can play all your old DOS games to your heart's content, and if something doesn't quite work right, well you can make some changes to the system and I'm sure you'll find a configuration that works for you. Well guys, thanks so much for watching. I hope you enjoy the rest of the holiday season with your new shiny, and I look forward to seeing you in another video.